Get ready to plunge into the electrifying world of tech news with the Next Tech Check podcast. Hosted by SmartTech Research's Mark Vena and NextCurve's Leonard Lee. This podcast offers bold insights, controversial debates, and monitors the pulse of innovation. It's the only podcast committed to keeping what's next in tech in check.
Hi, my name is Mark Vena, CEO and Principal Analyst at SmartTech Research, and this is Leonard Lee, Founder and Executive Analyst at NextCurve. Welcome to the Next Tech Check podcast. Today is Friday, September 13th, 2024. Leonard, how are you?
I'm doing great. Bit jet lagged. I was in Germany, and then now went back home to San Diego, and then now I'm here in Newark, on my way back home from Boston. And of course, you can tell I'm at an airport, right?
No, that's actually a set. It's a set in Leonard's house. He likes to have a set of a live background feed of a local airport, so he can always tell people he's busy. No, I it's been a busy last few weeks. I was in IFA last week. Neither here nor there. I was in Austin the last few days for Works with Silicon Labs, terrific event. But anyway, the topic at hand today, we got to talk about this because there was some big news on Monday, Leonard, and that is the big Apple announcement. Before we go into that, we implore people to subscribe and like to our podcast. We've got some QR codes up here. We'd love to have you kind of be reminded when we do these podcasts, which are becoming much more frequent. And I know Leonard feels the same way. So let's want to make sure we put that friendly reminder out there. But let's go into the big news that was on Monday. Apple had their Glowtime announcement. I still don't understand what Glowtime really meant, but that's neither here nor there. That was kind of a weird word for it. But before we go into the nooks and crannies, I thought it would be interesting, Leonard, just to kind of remind people about how Apple is really approaching AI with what they call Apple Intelligence. Obviously, their phone, Tim Cook was very, very clear during the podcast that these new phones, not exactly true because the 15s will support Apple Intelligence as well, but they're really being designed from the grounds up. And obviously, I think in future generations, the 17, 18, and over the next several years, you'll see much more integration from a hardware standpoint in the phone itself. But let's talk a little bit, Leonard, from your perspective, how Apple approaches AI versus maybe the rest of the industry.
Yeah, I think one of the big differences is that they're really taking a device-first approach, right? So focusing on getting AI or generative AI models operating standalone on a device and then working their way out, right? Everyone else is taking the approach of, hey, we've trained these massive models up in the cloud, we've created services, and now we want to project those down onto the devices, right, through techniques such as quantization and basically various tiny ML approaches to get the models to fit on a device. So they're taking a different approach in that regard.
Yeah, I think the other thing that always stands out at me is that Apple has this advantage where they have tens of millions of people with iPhones with lots of local data, and the way they're going to approach AI is that all the AI capabilities that, for example, your text messages, your emails, other data that's on the phone itself, that data from an AI perspective will be processed by Apple's their dedicated, highly encrypted local servers. And for requests outside, if you make if there's an AI request outside of the scope of the information that's on your phone, they've teamed up with ChatGPT for those type of capabilities. And I kind of like that, obviously, because I think Apple is a trusted brand. I think there's still going to be a lot of people a little bit nervous about, hey, if I want to summarize my emails, I want to summarize my text messages, do I really want to commit myself to the phone vendor that I work? But I think Apple has probably the best chance of that because of their reputation. But that's what the thing is interesting to me. They have this kind of bifurcated approach to AI.
Yeah, and other other OEMs, they're relying more on, let's say, open models, let's say like Llama, which was developed or built by, is being built continuously by Meta and other models rather than training their own things, right? And developing their own models, where Apple has gone and trained their own Apple Intelligence models.
Yes.
So when Apple says Apple Intelligence, these are their own models in that both reside on device, right? So the models that are on device were developed by and trained by Apple, and the ones that are also sitting in the private, I think it's called private secure cloud. That those are also trained by Apple and deployed in their cloud environment. So, and just like you said, anything that is beyond what these models can do, then you have these world models, and again, going from the device out to the cloud and beyond, right? Is really their approach. And so all these folks that say, oh, well, you know, Apple isn't in AI. It's like, well, you know, yeah, they are. And a lot of the stuff that they're doing on device, they're doing quite advanced leading edge stuff, which is really not that visible to a lot of folks. But if you do look under the hood and you see how Apple engineers and researchers are really investing in AI, you'll be quite surprised.
Right. No, and the interesting thing is, I want to get into the meat of the topic, which is the products that were announced, is that this announcement, and I suspect, because I know you, I think you'll feel the same way, the hardware was almost playing second fiddle to everything else. The entire event was Apple Intelligence, Apple Intelligence. How are we taking all our hardware, embedding AI capability? And that's not just with the phones, by the way. That also applies to their AirPods as well, now that they're getting into hearing aid area, and that's the second. We'll get to that in a second. But it's interesting that the hardware almost played second fiddle. Now, that's not to say that there weren't any notable changes made in new iPhones. They're getting bigger. Even the standard, the Max model is getting a slightly bigger. I thought that what was kind of interesting, they didn't blow out the price points. I was expecting the price points to be adjusted pretty dramatically. But was there anything at the phone level that's kind of surprised you? Oh, there is one other feature. We'll talk about it in a second. But at a macro level, was there anything that jumped out at you from a hardware standpoint?
Well, I don't know if you were going to mention the camera control button, but I thought that
was
really,
yes. Well, that
really
was big.
good.
Yes, please. Yes, that's big.
That was, and yeah, a lot more than the action button. I know that we talked about action button last year, which they introduced in the 15. I think this button is really a sort of I think everyone's going to be fast following it. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
It just off the bat looks like a compelling thing. The other thing that so a lot of people are saying, oh, you know, there wasn't a lot of changes. Well, there's a lot of changes under the hood. The 18 now it's going to be running the A18 processor, right? Apple's A18 processor. And so that's a 2-generation jump. The iPhone 15 ran to A16, right? So they're skipping A17, going to 18. And then, of course, the Pro line, the 16 Pro line is getting the A18 Pro. And right. So that's going to have an additional GPU core, I think, is really the main difference. But anyways.
And they showed a 30% performance advantage, if I recall. I mean, roughly.
Yeah, and I think the other thing to note is whereas with the 15, you only had spatial video and now photography. Yeah, that's a big deal. Yeah. Spatial photography with the Pro line now with the 16s, you get it in the 16 and the Pro line, right? And I think a lot of it has to do with the processor, because stitching this immersive content together on the fly, like they do with spatial video and spatial now photos, it takes processing power. You know, it's got to be fast. There's a lot of AI stuff that stitches all this stuff together. I think that's a big deal.
Well, and not only that, the action button for people who did not see the launch not only enables you with taking pictures like a conventional camera. Since the button is capacitive, it has other features. Like there was like a preview capability where you could actually select certain features. Now you can do that using the touchscreen, but it's much more. I mean, I'll have to play with it to see how practical it is, but it looks really compelling for me. So I do agree with you. I suspect that will be emulated by other companies. The other feature that dropped that really grabbed my notice was on the I believe it was on it's on the Pro Series only. They're adding additional microphones to the phone itself, and they showed a couple of really interesting demos. I'm a big podcast guy, so is Leonard. But when they were shooting some video footage where two people were eating at a diner, and there was a waitress, out of the shot, coming over and laying the food there, but she was saying a few words that could overlap the audio tracks of the two people that were speaking, and they're going to have the ability to be able, and I assume that they will be using AI to do this, is to screen out her audio because it wasn't relevant to the scene. So I thought that was a really again, maybe just a geek like me.
Yeah.
Really
yeah, we can use it now to screen out this lady that's on the intercom, right?
You know what?
Yeah, see, this
do
is a
that.
perfect use case. Yeah, maybe you can do that. I don't know if this platform does it for you. Hey, the other thing that I thought was really interesting, and I'm really hoping that this has an impact on spatial video and spatial audio on the Pro, is that the ultra wide lens got a 48 megapixel
camera.
Camera. It has now a huge sensor bump. And so that should be great for not just the macro shots, because usually macro shots tend to look a bit grainier. But, in the capacity of being part of that spatial video and audio camera assembly, I mean, if they can start to up the quality and the resolution of these immersive formats with more, powerful camera sensors, that's cool. But that's something that I noted, but that only applies to the Pro. It doesn't apply to the just the iPhone 16. Yeah.
So anyway, I guess the net here is that Apple continues to triple down on the camera as a fantastic computational photography device, and it's only going to get better, of course, over time.
Yeah,
there was some, and again, the AI, call it Apple Intelligence, call it whatever technology you want to, that's going to really do a really nice job of enhancing the video capture and photo capture experience.
Yeah, so. And then, there's some functions there, but then, to your point earlier, you can't really charge for this stuff, and I think we even mentioned this like a year ago. It's probably going to be the case that all the stuff is just table stakes. And in terms of monetization, I mean, Samsung doesn't do it, right? They don't charge for their Galaxy AI. They probably can't. And then Apple probably can't either. And so if you listen to a lot of the folks on Wall Street talking, and their assumptions about XYZ, super cycle, blah, 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 they're probably wrong.
No, I think you're right. No, I think you're right. Let's because I know you're going to catch a plane about 20 minutes. Let's talk about the watches. I think those are pretty significant. They announced the Series 10, which is the I can't believe this, the 10-year anniversary of the Apple Watch. I mean,
of a so-called failed product that looks ugly.
Right. I just can't believe it's been
oh my God, it's not a circle. It doesn't have a circular watch face. What's going on with that?
Right. So, and they also enhanced their Ultra family. It's not really a family. It was really a family. It's a large, supersized watch that I will probably upgrade to. I will say one thing they are increasing the base display size on the standard watch series. The thing that made me a little bit nervous is they're also thinning the watch out, and the battery size did not increase. So you're still not going to get what I would like to see, really good battery life, because here's the problem, Leonard. where I really think the Apple Watch could play a very pivotal role for people is on sleep apnea, which they did announce some functionality for that to address that. And the only way that works is you got to be able to wear the watch 24/7. You know, you can't be like I charge my watch very carefully every night before I go to bed, and it should be on my wrist, not on the charger. So now, and that's one reason why I'm going to probably be upgrading to the Ultra 2, because the Ultra 2 has really good battery life, but it's a much bigger watch. But was there anything that jumped at you in terms of the tweaks that were made, the announcements?
Well, I like the thinness. Also with the Ultra, well, you know, not a lot has changed, right? It's just we're going back to that. Remember, there was the iPhone used to come in only one color, and now it comes in two.
Yeah.
And when they came out with the dark space gray, or I think it was just the black iPhone, everybody tripped out, right? So we're having that same kind of moment, except for with the Ultra, and yeah, it's really tempting because that thing looks really great, you know. But I think with the 10 series making that screen bigger, I think is going to be significant, because if you look at the square displays versus the circular ones you see in the Android universe, I'm sorry, you have more real estate to play with. It looks better. And just making these bigger, I think just rubs. They're just rubbing it in. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, the larger display allows you to see a lot more stuff, and it allows you to now type and do a lot of things that I think are really difficult to do on a circular display.
No, and they made a big deal, by the way, that hey, now that we're growing the screen on the base Series 10 watch, you'll be able to see an extra line of text. You know, which for a lot of people, especially if you're a bit older, you know, and you may not have 20/20 vision, you know, that may come in very handy. You know, but I'm still concerned about battery life on the Series 10. So they didn't message that the battery life would change. Even though the screen got a little bit bigger because we're using a more efficient technology there. We'll see what the battery the battery life performance looks like. Yeah. So, but here's the one that I really want to get your opinion on. You know, they did upgrade the AirPods. They've now got the Pro 2. They've added hearing aid capability. I know quite a bit about this category because one of my clients has been very, very focused in this area, and it's not really a surprise, you know, because the from Apple's perspective, there's been rumors for the last 3, 4, 5 years that they would eventually get into this. Now, the interesting thing about people who have hearing loss is that the people who do have hearing loss are very vain, and they do not want to see a hearing acoustic device in their ear. And that's why there's other companies out there that have you essentially can't even see them. There are hearing aids that get embedded deep into your ear canal, and there's maybe a little bit wire that pulls that you pull out. But Apple might be onto something here, because there's a lot of people who do wear AirPods all the time, and it's not the stigma that it used to be a few years ago. You know, so I think that's going to be really interesting, because it's also, it's both an entertainment device because it delivers really rich audio, and it allows you to be in environments where you may not be able to listen to conversations in a profound way. So, what did you think?
Yeah, I think your AirPods oddly look like Apple Watches, there, buddy. But I think it's a big deal. Because I'm a musician, right? I get exposed to very loud noises, and hearing it, especially as I'm getting older, is becoming a bigger concern, especially given the fact that lately I haven't, if I'm in a large crowd, it's hard for me to have a conversation with someone. It's difficult to filter things out. So I'm becoming much more conscious about my hearing, and being able to use the device as a hearing aid, which I think they just received FDA approval, right?
Yeah.
But then also
literally today.
Yes, literally today, and then also the ability to use it as dynamic earplugs to and reduce the noise around you, so that hopefully being able to reduce annoying noises like this intercom thing that's going on in the background. But I frequently perform on stage, and I'm exposed to like 100 decibels
Oh
of
yeah.
sound for like an
Oh yeah.
hour. I am going to go deaf. And the idea that I can use my AirPods as high quality, earplugs. When I heard that announcement of that feature, and it's just a software update for the AirPod Pro, I think it's the
Pro two.
AirPods 2. Yeah, awesome.
Well,
Love it.
well, I will. But here's the thing I wanted to chat with you, and I know it's kind of a niche type of issue. And again, the whole mark of this podcast is we call them as we see them. I am beyond shock that Apple's new AirPod Maxes, which have been my go-to headphones since they came out, and to say they're long in the tooth would be kind because they've been out for 4 or 5 years, and they're still very expensive. They still deliver. I think they have probably the best over-the-ear experience on the market, and they should be because they're that expensive. But the only thing that they updated on them was they changed it from a Lightning connector to a USB-C. And the AirPod Maxes, God bless them, are in dire need of a diet. I mean, they're very heavy. I mean, I will not take them on the road because they're just too big. And so I can't wrap my head around the fact that they really made literally no major enhancements to it. I mean, did that surprise you? Or maybe am I the only one?
Yeah, I thought it was kind of funny, but USB-C is kind of a big deal for some people, I suppose, especially if you're road warriors like you and I, and you want to reduce the number of cords that you're taking on the road. Now, one of the things I'm trying to do is get rid of the Lightning cables, and that's happening slowly over time. But it could be a boon for some people, right? Who are who might not have wanted to pick up the AirPods Max because it was still using the Lightning cable. So I don't know.
I get, I kind of get that, but I'm an old marketing guy. From a marketing standpoint, I'm like, are you kidding me? I mean, all they had to do, I see some really technical details. I mean, essentially, it's the exact same product. They didn't enhance. They changed the chip in it. The Bluetooth, I believe, is the same Bluetooth standard they've used. That 3 years old, and they didn't enhance the battery life. But to me, even if they says, now it's 3 or 4 ounces leaner. That they've got. If you recall when they announced the AirPod Maxes, they got kind of ridiculed a bit. They didn't include any type of case for it. They had kind of like they're like muffin,
goofy looking case.
I would never use. But my chief problem with the AirPod Maxes, again, I still love them to death, is they're just too big for me to take on the road.
Yeah. So that's why you have AirPods.
That's exactly. Well, and I hate to say this, but I've been using the Sonos Aces for the last 2 months, and I love them.
That's fine. Great.
They're terrific. Well, why don't we wrap it up here?
Okay.
And because there's going to be a lot more to follow up on this. I mean, I guess the last thing we should just talk about for a second before we go to the credits here at the end is that do you really think Apple Intelligence is going to move the needle, Leonard, in terms of sales? I mean, iPhone sales have been a bit sluggish. Is it going to take a couple cycles for the kick in?
Yeah, I don't think it's going to hurt. I think, my whole point of view on all this is I think people have gone just overboard on how fantastic these features are, and they're not. In fact, there's reports coming out now that Apple Intelligence features are not reliable and have issues, or they generate junk, just like everyone else. And so it's not that Apple has done anything significantly beyond what everyone else has already demonstrated for over a year, a year and a half. And a lot of it is not just, it's simply not great. So,
Yeah.
You really have to get to great before, a feature or product upgrade really influences the buying decision. And these things are, think about it. It's like emojis and, even Copilot Plus. I barely use it. It's not
Yeah.
that great.
Right. But it will get better over time. I mean, that's really the key thing. And I still maintain, Leonard, that
Nope.
in the AI space, there will be some type of killer feature that will emerge out of all of this. Now that the foundational hardware is there, now that the software is there, and this applies not just to Apple, it applies to the entire market, something will emerge. There will be a Lotus 1, 2, 3 moment when someone's going to say, I got to have an AI-based phone, whatever vendor it might be from, and there's going to be some kick-ass feature that's, oh my God, this has changed my life. I don't know what that feature is quite yet, but it's going to be there. Leonard, thanks for viewing and listening audience. Thanks for making the Next Tech Check podcast part of your day or commute. Please make sure that you hit the like and subscribe buttons at the end of today's podcast, or use these convenient on-screen QR codes to connect with us. You can also follow us on X, formerly known as Twitter, at the handles below. Thanks, guys, and Leonard, have a great trip back to the West Coast.